So I have to tell you that the situation with Gavin Newsom is very interesting. The astrology correlations abound. And this is because you can see the patterns reflected in his own chart and in his combined chart with Trump, the composite chart, and in the relationship of his chart to the American chart, which is what you would expect if you have someone who might become a serious or very serious player in the political sphere. And of course, he's already a governor on his second term. And you can argue about whether you like what he did or what he's doing. All of that, in a way, is beside the point. He's already a major player. But you may remember that in a recent video, I said that he is possibly the top candidate for the 2028 election because of his chart, meaning he goes into 2027, and that summer, Jupiter enters Virgo, goes through his ascendant, which is an excellent transit. That would be around the time when he would be building his profile to win the nomination. And keep in mind that Clinton in 92 was elected on the Jupiter ascendant cycle, Barack Obama in 2008. So there are periods when people like you, your personality flourishes. It works really, really well. It's an ideal pattern to be experiencing and enjoying during a period like that, a period when you're trying to win something important. And then, remarkably, exactly on election night, by then Jupiter has switched to Libra, the next sign, which it does in 2028 pre-election, but right on election night, Jupiter is exactly conjunct his sun. This is as good as it gets from the point of view of succeeding at something. That said, there's a lot of navigating to be done before he gets there. And I have to be honest and tell you that 2026 especially, and really into the summer of 27, that period is quite challenging because he is a Libra, Saturn is on the other side in Aries, opposing, and he's going through his Saturn return in 2026. These periods are seldom easy, and now that he's propelled himself into a much more visible role, and effectively is already deemed a potential contender, the pressure is going to increase, the attacks are going to grow, and so that in part explains it. But those cycles would be difficult no matter what. And yet, it's almost always better to be experiencing them before you're going to your sweet spot, to the place where you want to win something big. So in a sense, they will even help him to clarify his vision and to set course in that direction as we go into 2027 and 2028. But what's very interesting is that first, if you look at the combined chart of he and the orange president, you notice that there is a very elevated Saturn in Gemini, and in a combined chart, in a composite chart, Saturn would be, in a sense, the definition of the relationship or the existing structure, much like in stark terms, Saturn rules your skeleton, the structure of the body in the most fundamental sense. So this would also be the structure of a relationship where it is at any moment in time. Well, it turns out that the Uranus cycle, keep in mind, this is an 84-year cycle. It's not going to be there very frequently, if at all, in any chart. And yet, there you see it once again, astrology as the art/science of meaningful coincidences. Uranus is transiting through that Saturn, thereby totally upsetting the apple cart, changing the situation, dramatically changing gears, which is what is taking place. That's to the relationship between the two of them. But separately, you'll notice that Newsom has a Pluto-Uranus conjunction square Mars. The Pluto to the Mars is very tightly square. And this is where you have to realize that those who say he is just being an opportunist and presenting himself as a fighter, this is almost certainly not true. In fact, I will state unequivocally it's not true. This man has the spirit of a fighter, of a brawler. Pluto square Mars, I like to refer to it as the John McEnroe aspect because that's what John McEnroe has in his chart. And if you saw the way he conducted himself in his sport, you would understand. You would get a sense of how Pluto Mars works. It's basically all out competitive energy, winning at all costs. And probably the main reason he's kept it hidden in the background up to now is because you need to have something to use it in, something where it fits. Otherwise, you could harm your own political career. And he's a Libra, which fundamentally operates as political friendly energy, being nice to everybody. Libra is the primordial relationship sign, and Virgo rising, which will always present a facade of uh, humble service in some sense. And that will keep the Pluto Mars hidden in the background until it has a chance to surface, which now it has. But why would that be, and why with Trump? Because Trump has his moon pretty much conjunct Newsom's Mars right away. You've got a connection there which leads to combat, and then Trump's sun is on the other end, Sun Moon, linking to that Pluto Mars square. And furthermore, they both link to the American Mars. American Mars is itself at 21 degrees Gemini, and so that's how Trump links with, but so does Newsom. These two are set to engage in a fight, essentially. And you've already heard me say in multiple videos that Trump is at a big disadvantage going into next year because of all the Saturn pressure. Now, it's true that Newsom is also getting Saturn pressure, but I think it'll be for different reasons. And there's also the matter of how skillfully a person uses a planet. And this is where the astrologer has to gauge the personality involved and how well they're doing with it. My judgment is that Newsom is much better than Trump at expressing Saturn, dealing with Saturn. It's essentially what is the level of discipline that a person displays. And Newsom has, let's just say, more than enough discipline, whereas Trump is somewhere between 0 and -1 on the scale of discipline. And so that Saturn is going to be considerably more difficult for Trump than for Newsom. But the bottom line is that you see these patterns where the astrology is very reflective of what is going on, including that the Uranus cycle, as well as doing that thing I mentioned to the combined chart, changing the nature of the relationship in a major way. In Newsom's chart, that Uranus is transiting in a square to his Jupiter and to his Venus in the next year and a half, a little more to the Jupiter at first, then to the Venus. This is what tells you that he's going to be taking more risks. That's what one of Uranus's key meanings. You take chances, you believe in yourself, you believe in the uniqueness of your individuality and what you're here for, what your vocation is, what your purpose is. And so you'll see him take more chances. And that, of course, does connote risks because things can go wrong. But I would be inclined to trust his judgment around how not to go too far and follow his political instincts, which again, you may be critical of his politics, of his personality, or whatever, but he has already accomplished quite a bit, thereby displaying his political acumen, not to mention that when all is said and done, the man is a really excellent communicator. I'm quite sure that Trump would never be able to debate this guy, although he probably won't have to. But I mean, in fact, Trump is finding out that you can say things, he'll say things too, and he might be better at that than you are. And so Newsom is definitely a presidential package. There's no question. Now he needs to be able to navigate for the next year and a half, 2 years max, to get himself in position. And this is something that the astrology can only point to the probability of something. There's nothing completely written in stone around how the future will eventually happen. But if you were to ask me, and given the current scenario as we're seeing it, and given the fact that he seems to have taken the mantle of leadership in the Democratic Party, and he's reading correctly, he's reading the landscape correctly, that Democrats are looking for a fighter. And this may be what this period in time demands. If you've heard me say many times that we're in the Civil War, planetary positions, as a meta model, you need a fighter. You need someone who's going to bring that kind of energy. And so in that sense, he totally fits the bill. There are other good candidates, though, no question. But I have to say, his chart is quite hard to beat. There's no question that if you're reaching for a big accomplishment and you have Jupiter as an ally, it is super helpful. And you can even add to that the fixed stars here, although I typically prefer to stay in the backyard, so to speak, of the solar system, which is still a pretty big backyard. But there are a few stars that are definitely important to mention, such as Sirius, which is in the 13, 14 degree range of Cancer. And there's Regulus in the late degrees of Leo. And there you see his Jupiter. So that Jupiter packs a punch. It's a powerful planet. And so as a result, its transits are more likely to bring big things. Of course, always within the context of the landscape, which in this case is political. But I gotta say, his chances are great. And I hope that the Democrats that are skeptical of him will realize that, yes, there might be someone different, but in politics, the key is you got to take what you can get. Whoever is nominated, we need to support. It's super important. Otherwise, what will happen is less people vote and so on, and it becomes possible to fail, which is what we want to avoid at all costs. I'll be doing more on this guy's chart, particularly if he stays in the news as he has been. So I'll keep plumbing for more clarity through the progressions, through the arcs, the nuance of the chart. So I'm sure you'll be seeing more videos about him in the near future. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you.